Dara, why don't you start off by talking about where Madeleine was born and when she had her first seizure?
Well, Madeleine was born in 2004, and she actually was born prematurely and had a stroke in utero. And then actually we did not see any seizures until she was 5 years old. She had her first seizure when in 2010, in the summer of 2010. And we were actually not expecting it, even though she did have brain damage on the left side of her brain due to the stroke in utero. We thought by that age we would not see any seizures.
And once those initial seizures began, what kind of medications did you use at that point?
We used pharmaceutical medications. Trileptal, I think, was one of the first, and Vimpat. Started with, low dosages, but she continued to have seizures. More were added on. Some were taken away because they had adverse effects, such as anger. We saw a lot of. She's actually normally very calm and very sweet. We saw things in her like personality changes, and so they would take some away and add some more, and we would still continue to see issues, but we would have to deal with them because sometimes her seizures would stop for a time, and then her seizures would come back, and they would have to keep adding more medication on.
Maddie, thank you for coming in with your mother. It's good to have you with us. Hi.
Hi.
Say hi.
Hi.
Maddie, can you talk about how a seizure feels for you?
It feels pretty not good, but I usually tell my mom that I'm having a seizure and that I have a good life with seizures, and that this medication is helping me.
So, Dara, can you talk about what that trajectory is from having gone through the seizures and then ultimately coming to Colorado, the drugs you used before and what you're using now?
Well, basically, last summer, the medications she was on, by the end of last summer, she was on 3 medications. Her emotions, and she was kind of like what I would call a zombie. She was a shell of a person. There were times where she couldn't even find the bathroom in the house that she grew up in. And that's how bad things were during that time. Whether that was from pharmaceuticals or seizures, we're still unsure. I think that the pharmaceuticals actually exacerbated her condition and made her worse. We decided when we saw this video about medical marijuana and how it was helping children with seizures, we decided the best thing for Madeleine was that we needed to move out to Colorado. And my mother joined me out here in Colorado. When we came out here and Madeleine started the medical cannabis, it was, as you heard in that video, it was our only hope before was brain surgery, taking out the whole left side of her brain. And to look at my child and imagine taking out the left side of her brain is very difficult for any mother, for any parent to see that. So when we heard that medical cannabis could help, at first it was scary because you're like, well, I don't want my child getting stoned. I don't want my child smoking pot. But once we realized that it really was an oil that is given, was given to her at first 3 times a day, sublingually in her mouth, and that it wouldn't get her high or anything like that, we slowly started to realize that actually the pharmaceuticals were making her high and that the cannabis was helping her get better. And she was off of all We started the cannabis oil in October, and she was off of all pharmaceuticals by the end of December.
And could you talk about the change, the frequency of the seizures previously, before you started this treatment, and what life is now like for your daughter and your family?
Yeah, she had 3 days of video monitoring and testing at Johns Hopkins Hospital in the summer. During that time, we were actually told, and we didn't know this, that 80% of her sleep was seizure activity. She was having so many seizures that she could not learn. She could not add. The neurologist put 2 fingers up and said, "What's 1 + 1?" And she said 3. She couldn't even add, and at this point she was 8 years old. And she couldn't read, she couldn't do anything. And so basically, once she started the cannabis, it took some time. It was a little roller coaster. You know, there was periods of time where she would have more seizures, and there were periods of time where she was very cognitively clear, is the best way to show it. She was coming out of her shell. She had starting to have a quality of life. It wasn't until she was totally off the pharmaceuticals. Now she sleeps through the night. Her EEGs have drastically changed from what they were to what they are now. It's miraculous because, like I said, she's on no pharmaceutical. She's only on cannabis oil, and her EEGs have drastically changed. She reads now for the first time. She is able to add simple addition and subtraction for the first time. She wants to learn, and that's huge as well. So there's a lot of positive changes that we weren't expecting. We were just expecting a decrease in seizures. We had no idea that we would see all the things that we're seeing with her now.
Maddie, what does your medicine taste like?
Charlotte's Web.
What does it taste like?
Oil.
It just tastes like oil. And how do you feel living in Colorado? Have you made new friends? Do you miss your friends from home?
I made new friends. I miss my friends in Virginia, where I used to live, and but I also like my friends in Colorado.
And Dara, this whole issue of having basically to uproot yourselves to go to another state to be able to have access to this kind of treatment, your thoughts on that?
Not everybody can get up and just leave like we did. We were blessed to be able to do so, but there's so many families who can't just get up and go. And we are happy to be here. We feel blessed that we are one of these pilot families to be able to be trying this out to show the world that this works. At the same time, the fact that we had to leave everything that we know and people are stripped from their families in order to do this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, I want to thank Maddie. I want to thank you for coming on. And Dara, I'd like to ask you to stay when we bring Dave Phillips on as well, the reporter who's been following you and Maddie and other families who are who have come to Colorado. How does it feel to be called a marijuana refugee, Dara?
In some ways, it's painful, and in some ways, it's a blessing. So it's painful that we are stuck here and we can't go to Disneyland, we can't go to a funeral, we can't go to a wedding if it's out of state. But at the same time, it's a blessing that we are able to do this oil and it's doing great things for our child.
Could you take the oil with you?
No, it's a Schedule I drug. It's federally illegal. It's legal here in Colorado, but we can't leave the state.